Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei was master of Chaldea and Harem with MASH Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Myth 0s216 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. To think I would find myself in this kind of situation, without having to look for it this time. He thought to himself while a woman with black wings threw spears of light at him. My will creates your body, and your sword creates my destiny. Stay still, you worthless human. No matter what you do, you will die here. The winged woman was becoming more irritated that this lowly human hadn't died when she initially attacked him. If you heed the Grail's call, then follow humanity's path and answer me. Thou shalt wear the spiritual language of the stars of seven heavens. I won't be stopped here. I have people waiting for me. The boy dodged another spear sent to impale him. Run! Purge! Pass your judgment, shut the hell up and die! The woman screamed, obviously fed up. The winged woman put more power into her spear, intending to end things here. Stop right there! Another voice rang out, but it was too late. The winged woman had already launched the spear. The boy, unmoving, raised his arm towards the incoming attack. Defender of balance. A brilliant light enveloped the area and dust kicked up from the force created. Clang! A loud metallic sound rang out, and the light spear shattered upon impacting something unexpected. The light faded, and when the dust cleared, a gigantic shield emerged from it. The winged woman was confused on what she was looking at until the shield moved, revealing the one wielding it. Mash Light. Ready to engage the enemy. Let's go, master, after completing the final singularity. Foe! Foe QQ, God, everything hurts. What happened? The boy stirred, opening his eyes, only to be met with another pair staring back at him with a mix of worry and relief. Senpai! Thank goodness you're awake, the girl almost yelled in relief, tears forming in her eyes. She moved in and hugged the boy with all her might. This girl is... Mash. She's alive? A moment passed before he realized. She's alive, hugging you back. The boy nearly jumped back at her, embracing someone he thought he had lost. Yes, good morning, master. I made it, Mash said with a bright smile. The boy let go of his kohai and asked the question that was bothering him. Mashu. This is so wonderful. But what happened to you? The boy was greatly relieved that his kohai was alive, but was also intensely curious on how she survived Goishia's noble phantasm. Well, I really don't know myself. When I came to, I was standing at the ray shift coordinates. She had her head in thought. I think I remember someone with a warm, kind voice sending me there, but I'm not sure. She looked directly at the boy again. I woke up to Foe's voice, and then I saw you running towards the ray shift coordinates right in front of me. And something told me to reach my hand out and take yours. Foe, do you know anything? Foe? The small white animal responded, ahem. Hey, now you two. That's enough PDA for now. I know you're relieved to see Mash alive, Fujimaru, but you're making the rest of the staff uncomfortable. A female voice came from the side of them. Both Mash and the boy released each other, and the boy noticed that the entire staff was in the operations room with them. Sorry, Da Vinci, I was just... His words started to falter, as he began to feel embarrassed at the display he just did in front of everyone. Da Vinci gave him an amused smile. It's fine. After all, we thought she was gone too. It's a great relief we were wrong. She gave the boy a once-over before continuing to speak. It took you almost an hour to wake up, but your vitals look fine. Your magic circuits were stressed, you seem to be fatigued, and you have a bunch of small wounds all over your body, but aside from that you seem to be fine. We're all glad you made it back in one piece. Da Vinci spoke happily towards him, but soon started to speak in a more official manner. Master Ritsuka, congratulations on completing your mission. With your return and awakening, I am pleased to announce our grand order is now complete. With that said, the staff released some party poppers and began cheering for the mission's success. Mash looked around in amazement, while Da Vinci looked at the pair in amusement. The staff and I prepared this beforehand for this exact moment. Although there is only a few of us, it was never going to be a thunderous applause. But we wanted to make it seem like a celebration. What do you think, Fujimaru-kun? Ritsuka had tears forming at the corners of his eyes. It's great. I couldn't think of anything better than this. He was happy that the people he had spent the last year fighting alongside could all be here to celebrate their victory. Well, almost everybody. Mash stepped forward happily. Everyone, thank you so very much. It was only thanks to your hard work keeping Chaldea safe and in a place where Senpai and I were able to return. This victory belongs to the entire staff of Chaldea. Everyone here made this possible. After that, Da Vinci went over what happened after the defeat of Goetia and what the damages were, along with the need for Chaldea to report what happened to the higher-ups. Now that the world is back to normal, we're going to have a lot of questions to answer, as well as she was interrupted by a sudden red glow that appeared in the room. Everyone turned to the light source only to find that Ritsuka was glowing and seeming to fade away slowly. Ritsuka looked at his own hand, a tired smile appearing on his face. Seriously, is this some plot to an anime or something? He said somewhat self-deprecating. Senpai! What's happening to you? Mash almost yelled worriedly. She didn't seem to understand what she was seeing, mostly because it didn't make sense to her from what she knew. Da Vinci, on the other hand, seemed to have an idea of what was happening. You're going back, aren't you? She said with a sad look in her eyes. Mash looked between Da Vinci and her senpai and seemed to come to a realization. Senpai is returning to his own world, she said with great sadness in her voice. Ritsuka gave her a tired smile and spoke so that everyone in the room could hear. It seems so. I kinda had a feeling ever since Camelot. Me and Drake talked about it for a bit, and we felt like we were summoned here for a reason, although I didn't think it would be like from some isekai anime where once the job was done I would be sent back to my home. He looked around the room before continuing. Everyone, it's been fun working with all of you and I'm glad to have met you all. He took a deep breath, and with power behind his eyes made this promise. I promise to find a way back to everyone. After all, I'm sure there will be more work for us to do, he said with a wry smile on his face. Everyone had one on as well and seemed to be content with his words. He then turned to Mash and took her hands into his. Mashu, we still have a bunch of trips to go on, just like we promised. So please wait for me. He tightened his grip. Mash looked at her senpai, smiling with tears rolling down her face. Yes, senpai. I will wait for you, so you better keep your promise. On the side, Da Vinci tried asking while she could. Do you think you will be able to do it? She was concerned that he was making a promise he couldn't keep. Ritsuka looked at Da Vinci, barely hanging on to the current plane of existence. You got me here once, so I don't see why not. On top of that, I came from 2007 in my world, so if I'm going back then I at least have some time to work with. Of course, feel free to try and bring me back on your end. He chuckled weakly, exchanging smiles. Well, it looks like I can't stick around any longer. Until the next time we meet, everyone, see ya. And with that he faded from the world. Mash stood, staring at the spot where her senpai once stood. I will wait for you, even if I have to wait the rest of my life, she promised under her breath. Several months after returning to his own world, Rias Gremory was staring out of the window of the Occult Research Club, thinking about how to get out of her unfortunate arrangement. Her family had put her in an arranged marriage to another devil of equal social status in order to keep producing a bloodline of pure devils. The underworld was currently in a state of decline due to falling birth rates of devils, even more so of pure-blooded devils, so her family had arranged for their family and another family to have their children marry in order to try and keep the bloodline pure and ongoing. The problem was that her betrothed-to-be, Riser Phoenix, was a complete douchebag and treated her more like an object than a person. On top of that, Rias wanted to choose the person who she would marry, and this arrangement, while good for her family, went against her own desires. She understood she had a responsibility to her family, and while proud to be a Gremory, the arrangement this time around is simply too cruel for her. Even though the family's new Riser's personality, they still went ahead and arranged it anyway. So as she had time before the engagement, Rias was working on finding a way to break off the marriage. As she was thinking, the sight of a person resting under a tree came into her view. The person in question was Ko Academy's mystery boy and notorious pervert, Issei Hayato. She went over what she knew about the boy in her mind. Issei was a normal student at Ko Academy, average grades, average looks, although to her she found him quite handsome but not overly so, and an all-around good personality. His only quirk was that he was an unrelenting pervert. He was known as a member of the infamous perverted trio along with Matsuda and Motohama, and was known for getting into trouble with them for peeping on the kendo club. Most of the girls in school see him as the enemy of women, but Rias found him refreshingly honest. It wasn't as if other boys didn't have the same desires, considering how often she found her own assets stared at by other students. Issei simply didn't bother hiding it. Ria's face turned into a frown as she thought of the incident. That all changed after the end of the final term of first year. One day Issei had simply disappeared without a trace. His parents called the police and an investigation was done, but there was no evidence to figure out what happened to him. Rias herself along with her friend and rival Sona did some investigating in case it was something supernatural, but came up empty on their end. A couple months passed and the police had given up the search and the Hyades thought their son had become another victim of children who disappeared never to be found. That is until a 110 call came in and someone had found Issei in an alley with many cuts and bruises. He was quickly taken to the hospital and patched up by the doctors. Soon after the police arrived to question him about what had happened but were unable to get any information out of him. The doctors found that he had scar lines along his body and determined they were from some kind of surgery but unable to find out what the purpose was, even with X-ray scans. His parents brought him home and he spent a week recovering before he went back to attending school. His parents had to make arrangements with the school so that he could wear a shirt during school activities involving swimming, so as to not show the scars on his body. He also wore fingerless gloves at all times now, and no one in school can seem to get him to explain why. Once he returned, many of the students and faculty asked about what happened, but he more or less didn't give them an answer. Rias herself along with the student council president Sona went to greet him upon his return and noticed multiple changes with him. Unlike before, he had become a bit more calm compared to his previously boisterous self. He had also become more fit from how he looked previously, not drastically so, but noticeable to the trained eye. When Rias had gone to greet him, unlike before where he would have been too flustered to talk to her, he had been kind and responsive, although Rias didn't miss how his eyes went to her first before immediately returning to meet her gaze. The most important change, however, was noticed by both Rias and Sona. They could sense the power of a sacred gear in him, and it was powerful. They weren't able to tell what kind of sacred gear it was, but the both of them had a feeling that it was the reason he had disappeared. This discovery caught their interest and they both wanted to recruit him into their respective peerages. But when they initially began to approach him, either with their other members or by themselves, they noticed that he somehow managed to avoid them. They weren't sure if it was because he knew something or if it was just coincidence, but it only added to the mystery. She remembered how Sona had hypothesized that it may have been a devil that was responsible for his disappearance, and that was why he was avoiding them, so they backed off of trying to recruit him for now. That didn't stop Rias from sending her familiar to keep an eye on him, however. Rias was shaken from her thoughts as the person in question had gotten up, apparently finished with his relaxation, and looked around only to meet Rias' gaze. He smiled and waved at her, which she returned, and then proceeded to walk off. As he walked off, Rias returned to her desk, continuing to mull over her impending engagement. Issei was walking back home, considering what his next move should be. He was well aware that something was following him, and had been ever since his return from Chaldea. He had done his best to keep a low profile while gaining skill and power, but honestly things had become quite troublesome for him. Although things are easier since he told his parents what happened and how he wanted to progress from there. He remembered the skeptical looks when he told them that he was summoned to another world, and that magic was real. They considered calling the hospital again, until he showed them the boosted gear that was a part of him, to them. Thankfully Drake was helpful in explaining both the truth of their world as well as what had happened to their son while he was away, and that convinced them that he was telling the truth. From that point forward they helped Issei get whatever he needed to better prepare himself for the future, since there was a chance of him being attacked at any time. The Hyades didn't want to lose their son a second time, so they took whatever steps they needed to help him, though they were still worried for him and clearly wanted to do more. I appreciate their willingness to help, but there is only so much they can do, he said to himself as he walked home. I need to figure out what to do about the devils at school. If they're friendly, maybe we could work something out, but they have the same family names as those of the 72 demon god pillars. I have to be cautious. It wouldn't be the first time a supposed friend betrayed me. Issei thought back to Professor Lev and how he had been a plant in Chaldea the entire time. He wasn't that close to him personally, but others at Chaldea were, including the former director Olga Animosphere, costing her her life. She may not have been the kindest person, but she didn't deserve what happened to her. Issei remembered watching her die and the look of complete despair on her face. It still haunts him even after more than a year has passed since. He was brought out of his thoughts upon returning to his home. When he walked in the front door, his mother greeted him. "Hi, sweetie, how was school?" she asked cheerfully. "It was fine. Nothing too exciting." "How was your day, Ka-san?" he asked back cheerfully. Same old, same old. Just cleaning the house and watching my shows. Dinner will be ready soon, so make sure to eat it before you go out tonight," she said with a grin. She didn't like the idea of her son going out at night, considering that was how he disappeared last time, but after they talked about how to move forward with what they know now, she conceded to her son's desires even if they made her worried. "I will, Ka-san. I have to wait for that little bat to go away before I can do anything anyways." He had made it no secret that he was being spied on by someone. He had considered not telling them so that they wouldn't worry, but ever since he came back his parents had been sharper about when something was wrong with him. So he decided that there wouldn't be any secrets between them. This included Issei's late nights out that could possibly take a few days depending on what he is dealing with. "Well, let's see what I can find tonight," he thought, absently anticipating tonight's excursion. The next day, Issei and his friends were hanging out in the schoolyard watching the female track team do laps, paying especially close attention to the way they bobbed up and down as they ran. "Hey Issei, are you coming with us to the girls' changing room to peep? The Kendo Club is about to finish practice," Motohama asked while pushing up his glasses. "Sorry guys, but I have something to do today. Maybe next time," Issei said, eyes still trained on the running beauties on the field. Matsuda gave Issei a confused look. "What's up with you, man? You haven't been out to peep with us in ages," he asked, baffled by how his friend had been acting for a while now. "You haven't come to watch any of the special videos we got either." "Sorry, but well, I've had other things on my mind lately. There are things I need to take care of before dash." He stopped himself from saying more, not wanting to get into it. His mind always traveled back to his Kohai Mash, who he promised he would return to. As Issei's mind wandered, Motohama suddenly rose to his feet, surprising the other two. "You bastard! Don't tell me!" he exclaimed loudly. "Don't tell me you actually have a GI Guha!" The frantic boy was interrupted with a punch to the gut. The commotion had gathered the attention of other students that were nearby. Issei looked down at him, annoyed. "Don't let your imagination run wild. I have a hard enough time here without you creating strange misunderstandings. No, I don't have a girlfriend and I would appreciate you not making something up and creating chaos," he said with great irritation in his voice. Issei wasn't stupid, he knew he had a bad reputation in the school for being a perv. It was kind of sad that that was the only thing he was being judged on because nobody bothered to try and get to know him. He only had a few friends in school and they were the only ones who interacted with him amicably. Even though he cut back on his antics ever since he came back, he still got blamed because his friends would still get into trouble. It was a guilt by association situation for him, but he came to accept it, even if it irritated him. Unfortunately, even though he denied it, the nearby students started talking amongst themselves about the accusation. There's no way Hayata has a girlfriend. Who would ever go out with a pervert like him? If he has a girlfriend, he probably blackmailed them. Really? I feel sorry for them. And on, the gossip spread like wildfire. Issei frowned, agitated at what his friend started. And there it goes. I'd have an easier time trying to befriend Tiamat or Goishia rather than stopping gossip in high school. He turned to his spectacled friend. See what you did? Now there are going to be rumors about me being some malevolent blackmailer because of your carelessness. He angrily stated at his friend, who was now shaking in fear, thinking he was gonna get hit again. Instead, Issei grabbed his stuff and left for the day, not looking forward to coming to school tomorrow to all the new rumors he would be bound to hear. The next day, as Issei expected, the rumors had spread to ridiculous degrees and everyone in school was looking at him like some filth on the ground. Matsuda and Motohama were looking at Issei nervously. Considering this was their fault and the fact that Issei had a very clear "I'm annoyed, don't test me" presence around him, they were hesitant to speak to him. Someone else, however, wasn't. A girl walked up to Issei and stood near his desk. Issei looked up to the girl, not changing his expression. Said girl was Aika Kiryu, one of, if not the only girl in school who would talk to the perverted trio amicably. She was also known around school as the female pervert, but for some reason the rest of the school treated her normally. So, Aika began. You have a girlfriend? Her expression showed a teasing smile. Ha! Issei let out an elongated sigh before answering. No, I don't have a girlfriend. Those idiots couldn't understand why I don't hang out with them as much and began to make up a reason as to why. Even though I tried to stop them, the rumors began to spread like wildfire. You know how it is for me. The other students automatically assume the worst without anything to base it off of. He said irritatedly and loud enough so the rest of the class could hear. The other students were pretending not to eavesdrop, and doing a poor job of it. I know my reputation is bad from before. He paused mid-sentence, not wanting to specify. The others in the room knew what he meant when he said that. But it's like everyone thinks nothing has changed. Is it really so easy to think the worst of me? Issei looked directly at Aika. Unfortunately, as long as you associate with those idiots, everyone is gonna act like their problems are your problems. Kiryu said, ignoring the complaints from the other two perverts. It also doesn't help that while your personality may have changed, your tastes haven't. You're still a pervert. She smiled wryly. Pot meat kettle, Issei said under his breath. He couldn't deny her words though. If he really wanted to restart socially, he would have to abandon his friends. But he wouldn't do that for such a shallow reason, although the idea has been more tempting as of late, as his friends had been more harmful than helpful to him lately. At this point he was one bad incident away from leaving them altogether. Issei recollected himself and turned to Kiryu. I wouldn't do something so shallow. What kind of person would I be for abandoning my friends just to score social points? The two perverts had happy tears in their eyes, thankful that their bro wasn't just gonna up and leave them. Aika gave the two a look that said those two can't be helped, then returned to the conversation. Well, it's not like you have time for a girl right now anyways, considering your after-hours activities. She said low enough so only Issei could hear her. He gave her a complicated look, then turned away. Aika knew about Issei's circumstances as well but didn't have all the details, so she was somewhat sympathetic to his plight. Living a double life sure isn't all it's cracked up to be, huh? They make it look so much easier in anime and movies. Issei playfully complained. But if I want to protect the things that are important to me, I have to keep going. His look changed to one of determination. The other students couldn't hear them, but a few had surprised looks on their faces at Issei's expression. Some of the girls slightly blushed at an appearance that could only be described to them as manly before shaking that feeling off at remembering who they were thinking about. Aika gave him an affirming nod before returning to her desk. The teacher finally entered and classes began like normal. Later, as school ended, Issei was heading to his locker to get his things and head home. Upon opening his locker, something unexpected fell out. A pink envelope fell to the ground and immediately grabbed the attention of everyone nearby. No way! Is that? Matsuda said, stunned at what he was seeing. Issei bent over and picked up the letter. He gave it a look over to see if it was addressed to anyone specifically. There was a faint perfume smell coming off the letter. He then opened it and read the letter while everyone present watched dazed. Please meet me by the old fountain tomorrow at sunset. Your secret admirer. The writing was definitely feminine. He was surprised and suspicious. His friends apparently had finally recovered from their shock because now they decide to hound him. You bastard! Motohama shouted. All that bullshit about not having a girlfriend and now you get a love letter. What? The hell? He had grabbed Issei's collar halfway through his rant and was shaking him vigorously. Matsuda followed up after his friend. How could you do this to us? I thought we were brothers. Now you got some girl wanting to meet you and probably do some ecchi stuff with you too, he wailed. The other students were now in a frenzy, talking amongst themselves about what was happening. No way, he actually got a love letter. It must be a day of miracles. Maybe I should go buy a lottery ticket. There's no way there's someone crazy enough to date that pervert, right? Issei, under normal circumstances, would have been over the moon about getting a love letter. Of course, that was the old Issei. Will you two shut up? It's not like I planned this. I'm just as surprised as you are. And to be honest, I don't even believe it myself. He had an exasperated look on his face. I have half a mind to believe this is some elaborate prank on someone else's part. After he said that, the other students seemed to calm down somewhat, with some of them saying I see. Or that must be it. While coming to some sort of understanding. He also heard someone say even if that makes sense, that's just too cruel even for a pervert like him. At least someone had some sympathy for him. His friends finally seemed to come out of their hysteria and ask Issei. So, are you going to meet this person? Issei gave them a side glance, then turned to head for the exit. Yeah. If for no other reason than to find out who sent it. He stopped just short of the exit and turned his head back with a mischievous smile. Of course, if it's legit, then I'm not going to waste this opportunity. Looks like I'm going to be busy tomorrow. He then walked out while his friends went back to cursing him. Once Issei got home, he told his parents about what happened today. I'm so happy for you, his mother told him. Is this our chance to finally have a daughter-in-law? His father was almost weeping as he asked that. Issei's sweat dropped as he addressed his parents. Glad to see you had faith in me, he said sarcastically. Unfortunately, I'm not as hopeful as you two are. We all know what my reputation is, so I'm more inclined to believe this is some prank from someone who hates me, he stated pessimistically. Both of Issei's parents had sad looks on their faces. While they couldn't deny his words, it still made them sad at how their son's way of thinking had changed. He used to be so hopeful even if things looked bad for him, but ever since he came back home he had been less positive. It's only to be expected considering what he had been through, but the pair missed their son's childlike wonder that he had held on to for so long. So what are you going to do? Issei's father asked, repeating what his friend asked him earlier that day. I'm going, if only to find out who sent it. On the off chance this person is serious though, I'm not going to give up this opportunity, he said, determined. The pair had a small smile on their face, glad that their son hadn't completely given up on a normal life. Issei started heading for his room. I should get my clothes ready for tomorrow in case it turns into a real date. I don't want to look like a mess after all. Rias was stretching in the clubroom, having finished her paperwork for the day. Beside her, Akino, her queen, was handing her some tea she had prepared. Is your work going well, Bucho? Akino asked. Yeah. I just finished up today's requests. How are things around school? Anything of note happen? She asked while bringing her cup to her mouth. Akino put a finger to her bottom lip and smiled as she answered her king. Well, did you hear the latest rumor about Hayato-kun? Rias shook her head in denial. Apparently he got a love letter before leaving today. It was quite the hot topic, especially among the other members of the perverted trio. Rias smiled. She could just picture the look on their faces. Any idea from who? She asked. No idea. He didn't let anyone see it, not even his friends. Although it seems Hayato-kun himself isn't too hopeful about it. Ria's face slightly frowned, confused. Isn't this what he has always wanted? Why do you say that? She asked, bewildered. Akino also frowned and responded. Well, apparently Hayato-kun thinks it's some kind of prank being played on him. Rias could see that happening. He had a bad reputation after all. Even so, no one deserves to have their heart stomped on. So what is he going to do? She asked, slightly worried for him. He is going to meet whoever this is, apparently, the queen said. Do you know when it's supposed to happen? The redhead asked. Sometime tomorrow. He didn't specify. Rias nodded her head in understanding and came up with a plan. While this might be underhanded, this might create a perfect opportunity for us. If things do go wrong, we can have one of us come in and help him, which would make it easier to recruit him into my peerage. Akino was slightly surprised at her king's plan, but then a mischievous smile crept onto her. Era, are you perhaps using this plan as an excuse to spy on Hayato-kun's date instead? She said teasingly. Rias slightly blushed and denied it. Oh, of course not. Why would I do something like that? I'm only interested in his sacred gear, she stated unconvincingly. Akino decided to tease her further. Era, poor Issei-kun. It seems he's only valuable as a pawn for our king. Rias gave her queen a small glare before Akino leaned in and spoke again. I'm sure you just want to help him, considering your own love life troubles. Akino had a kind expression on her face while looking at Rias. Rias simply looked down, neither confirming nor denying what her queen said. Anyways, we should wrap up our work for the day, she said, trying to change the subject. Akino just gave a small fufu and responded. Whatever you say, Rias. Issei was walking through downtown, heading towards the meeting place of his supposed secret admirer. He had already made 2 plans for the day depending on how it went. A. If it was a prank, then he would deal with the culprits and get on with his day. B. If this was for real, he had plans to take the girl all over town and do his best to show her a good time. What they did specifically would be dependent on what kind of person this girl was. Incidentally, that bat that has been keeping a watch on him for someone has been following him ever since he left his house. If things go south, at least there will be a witness, although that may or may not be a good thing. Issei finally made it to the water fountain and waited there for several minutes before a girl approached him. She had long black hair and was in a school uniform that he didn't recognize. The girl timidly approached him before stopping a few feet away. "I am glad you answered my letter," the girl said nervously. "I was worried you weren't going to come." Issei gave her a small smile. "Well, it would be rude to ignore a letter from a girl, especially one as pretty as you." He did his best to be nice while hiding his suspicion. The young girl blushed and decided to continue. Thank you. I was wondering, if you don't already have one, if I could be your girlfriend?" She twirled her hair with her finger nervously. Issei felt excited inside but quelled that emotion. "Well, it's possible, but I would like to get to know you first." He had to play this right. If this was real, he didn't want to make her feel bad because of his paranoia. But if this was an elaborate prank, she could be just waiting for him to let his guard down, then smash his heart, figuratively anyway. While Issei was contemplating his actions, his thoughts were interrupted by a deep voice. "Partner, I can feel power emanating from that girl." Drake spoke into his mind. Issei immediately went on alert but tried not to show it. "Is she another devil?" he mentally asked in a serious tone. "No. This girl's power is different. She smells like a fallen angel." A fallen angel. It was his first time encountering one. He focused on the girl, trying to feel for her power, and found it to be true. It was different from what he felt from Rias and Sona, and if he wasn't looking for it, he would have never noticed. Things just got more complicated. He thought as he readied himself to use magic if things got violent. He hoped that this was just a coincidence, and that maybe she really wanted to go out with him. "That's fine, but can I ask you to do something first?" the girl asked with a somewhat innocent look. Issei inclined his head to indicate to her to continue. "Would you die for me?" Issei mentally sighed to himself. Well, so much for that hope. He quickly took a defensive position. "How about no?" he said snarkily. The girl began to change right in front of him. Her body went from a high school girl's to a more voluptuous adult body. Her clothes went from modest to black leather that barely covered the important bits. Jet black wings appeared out of her back, confirming what Drake told him. She looked at him condescendingly. "Your consent isn't necessary. You are going to die here. If you're going to blame anyone, blame God for giving you that sacred gear." Issei made an annoyed tch noise at that. "So that's what this is about. How annoying, but now I know other beings can sense me too. Gonna have to work on that later." He made a mental note as the fallen angel created a light spear and threw it at him. Issei managed to dodge out of the way but was soon met with another spear heading for him. He was mid-dodge, so he couldn't avoid this one. "Guess I got no choice. It's either block or die." He created a magic circle with his hand and deflected the incoming spear. The fallen was clearly not expecting him to be able to use magic, because now her posture changed from relaxed to wary. "Tch. So you can use magic? Well, it doesn't matter, you're still just a lowly human. Nothing you do will be able to harm me." With that, she put more power into her next spear throw. Issei blocked this one, but the force behind it caused his gloves to rip off. "Hey! I like those gloves," he complained half-heartedly, trying to figure out a plan. "Do I look like I care what a dead man thinks?" The fallen was getting more irritated. "What should I do? If I use more power, then I will expose myself to whoever is watching me. But if I don't fight back, I will only end up dead, and that's not an option." He looked to his now exposed hand to see his command spells, still on his hand even after he returned from Chaldea. He had people who he had to see again no matter what. "Well, I guess it's do or die time." He felt the power of it course through him still, but whenever he tried to summon his servants to him before, it didn't work. But he was going to place all his bets on it this time, to prove that he was willing to risk everything for a chance. "Here goes something." Sometime earlier, when the fight started, Rias rose from her seat so fast it startled the other members of the ORC in the room. She had been watching Issei to see how things would turn out, but she never expected a fallen angel to attack him. Before Akino could ask what happened, Rias spoke alarmed. "Issei is being attacked by a fallen angel. We need to go help him immediately." She ordered the others and they began preparations to save Issei. Meanwhile in Chaldea, Mash was walking through the halls of Chaldea trying to be helpful. It had been a few weeks since Ritsuka returned to his own world, and Chaldea had been busy explaining what happened during the Grand Order, and how everything got solved. It had been quite hectic for everyone, and Mash and the servants that remained were doing their best to help make things easier. She absent-mindedly thought how her senpai was doing, although not that much time had passed. She was brought out of her thoughts when a communication came in. "Mash, I need you to come to the command room immediately. It's urgent. Da Vinci spoke in a somewhat distracted tone. Mash was slightly taken aback but nodded. Alright, I'm on my way. She began running down the hall with Fo on her shoulder. When she arrived, she found Da Vinci as well as several other staff members working at their stations, completely focused on what they were working on. Mash went up to Da Vinci, who was furiously working on something. I'm here, Da Vinci-san. What's happening? Mash asked with a serious look on her face. Da Vinci gave Mash a glance before returning to the screen in front of her. We got a signal just now. It's weak, but... Da Vinci turned her head fully to Mash. We think it's Fujiwara-kun, she said seriously. Mash was surprised. She wasn't expecting anything so soon. She felt the urge to jump for joy, but the look on Da Vinci's face said that wasn't all there is to it. Is something wrong? Mash asked, worried. Da Vinci returned to the screen. The readings are messy, but from what I can tell, Fujiwara-kun seems to be in danger, or at the very least under duress. Mash looked shocked. She had hoped that once he had gone home he would have some time to relax before something happened, but now he was in danger, and no one could seem to help him. She couldn't help him. For some reason, after they returned from the Temple of Time, Mash hasn't been able to use her servant powers. Even if she could go to him, she would be useless. She bit her lip in vexation. Isn't there anything we can do to help? Mash asked. We're having a hard time just trying to establish communication. We won't be able to send anyone to help, especially without a summoning zone, and he doesn't have your shield with him either. Da Vinci also seemed vexed. Neither knew what to do in this situation and simply hoped that Ritsuka would come out okay, but suddenly Mash felt something. She put her hand over her chest as something was calling out to her. Senpai? She said out to no one in particular. Da Vinci looked at her perplexed but then started getting a signal from Ritsuka. It was the same readings as when he would try to summon a servant. It was then that she realized that Mash was responding to him. Mash, keep focusing on whatever you're feeling right now. I think Fujiwara-kun is trying to summon you. Mash's eyes went wide at what she was told. Senpai wanted her help, despite how useless she was right now. No, she couldn't think that way. No matter how bad things got, her senpai kept moving forward. Now it's her turn to move forward and help her senpai. Her and Fo's body began to glow, and a magic circle appeared beneath her. Master, I'm coming! In a flash of light, Mash and Fo were gone. The fallen was trying to comprehend what just happened. She was certain that the spear she threw was going to kill him, but then someone else appeared out of nowhere and blocked it. Such an ability was not part of her information about her target. He should have been just some ordinary high school student with a sacred gear, yet nothing had gone as planned. What is this? What did you do? She yelled, irritated at the human. Issei didn't seem to hear her because he was completely focused on his kohai, who he successfully summoned in front of him. Mashu. It's really you. He was so happy but did his best to hold back his emotions. Now wasn't the time for happy reunions. Yes, master, I heard your call, so I came as quickly as I could. She repositioned herself, ready for a fight. What is the situation? He refocused himself and stated. That fallen angel is trying to kill me. That was all he said. He had to keep in mind that he was still being watched, and now they know he can summon people to help him. He exchanged a look with Mash that said he would explain more later. Understood. Let's defeat her together, master. Don't think that adding another person will change anything. I'll still. She was cut off mid-sentence as she had to deflect a bolt of destruction energy fired at her with her light spear. Everyone turned to see who fired the attack, and they saw Rias there with her peerage. Who are you and what do you think you're doing attacking someone in my territory? Rias demanded from the fallen. The fallen let out an annoyed tch noise. You got lucky this time, human. The next time we meet will be your end. A magic circle appeared beneath her, and she vanished. With the fallen angel gone, everyone there relaxed a bit. Everyone spread out and make sure there aren't any surprises nearby. Rias told her peerage and they went to do so. Rias approached Issei and his new companion. She was about to address them, but Issei started talking first. Phew, that was close. Thanks a lot, Ma. He was tackled to the ground by Mash, who was hugging him with all her might. Fo, who also appeared with Mash, jumped to his shoulder, rubbing against his cheek. Senpai. I missed you so much. Even though it hasn't been that long since we parted ways, it felt like an eternity. She was crying and pouring her heart out to her important person who she thought she might never see again. Issei was surprised at how Mash was acting. He had never seen her this way before, although he would be lying if he said he wasn't happy. I'm sorry it took me so long to get in touch. Although considering it took me only several months, maybe I should be grateful it only took this long. Mash removed her head from his chest and looked up at him confused. A few months? It has only been a few weeks, she said, confused. Eh? Issei was confused now too. Is there some kind of time discrepancy between here and there? He was trying to figure out where the disconnect was. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to ponder it too much as they were inevitably interrupted. Ahem. Rias cleared her throat to get their attention, and so that she could stop feeling like air. Upon realizing that there were other people there, Mash immediately moved between Rias and company and Issei and deployed her shield to protect her master. Rias was taken aback by this, not expecting her to be on guard against her after she came to save them. There is no need to be alarmed. I came to help, Rias said in as friendly a tone she could, trying to ease the girl's suspicion. It's okay, Mashu. She is my senpai from school, Issei said, standing up from the ground and dusting himself off. Mash relaxed a bit and moved her shield to the side, although it didn't go unnoticed by Rias that she didn't dismiss it like before when she didn't notice them. Thank you for your help, Rias-senpai. I wasn't expecting to get attacked like that today. So that was a fallen angel, huh? Honestly, I wasn't expecting my first interaction with the factions to be like this. Upon saying that, Rias' eyebrows raised as she was staring at Issei. Issei gave her a small smile and lightly said, I'm vaguely aware of the supernatural. Well, it could have gone better. Rias gave him a discerning look, trying not to miss this opportunity. Why don't you come to the Occult Research Club after school tomorrow? I would be glad to help inform you on the things you don't know about the supernatural. I'm sure it will be enlightening for both of us. Issei pondered this for a moment. All right, that sounds like a good idea. He gave her a slightly suspicious look. As long as information exchange is all that's happening. Rias was being surprised again and again today. She had never been treated like this before. It was quite new to her. That aside, she frowned at the subtle accusation that Issei threw at her. I understand that you were just attacked, Hayato-kun, but believe me when I say that I would never do something like that, she responded frostily. Issei stared at her a bit longer before responding. Well, like you said, I just got attacked. You can't exactly blame me for being wary. He relaxed a bit, then his expression changed as if remembering something. Oh right, it should be fine for me to bring her along to this meeting as well, right? He asked nonchalantly, his eyes indicating who he was talking about. Rias gave an affirmative nod. It shouldn't be a problem. I can see how having someone with you would make things more comfortable for you. She brushed her hair aside, trying her best to look refined. I will have someone from my peerage come to pick you up tomorrow after class. Issei gave an affirmative nod to Rias, and she took that as her cue to leave. I will see you after school tomorrow, Hayato-kun. Once her peerage had gathered together, they all left for the clubroom. Rias was pondering what she was gonna have to do to prepare for tomorrow. I should probably tell Sona what happened and invite her to join the meeting. With those thoughts in her head, she went home for the day. As the members of the ORC left, Issei and Mash were left alone. Mash dismissed her shield and turned to face Issei. What do we do from here, senpai? Mash was in a completely unknown place, and was relying on her senpai to know what to do next. Issei pondered for a bit before smiling. Well, I was planning on going on a date today, but seeing as how the other girl tried to kill me, I guess that means I'll have to take you instead. Issei had a mischievous smile on his face as he was talking to his kohai. Mash, on the other hand, was having a brain overload. A DD date? Me and senpai? He wants to go with me? Wait. He was going to go on a date with someone else. Mash's mind was in chaos. Many emotions and thoughts were fighting for control over what to do. Eventually one made it to the surface. If you're fine with me, senpai, then I will go with you. Mash's face was blushing to the max. Issei had to stop himself from bursting out laughing at how adorable Mash was being. He recollected himself, then addressed her. Hey, do you think you can change into your normal clothes? It would be kinda weird to walk around town with a girl in armor. I will try. Mash focused her mind on trying to turn back to normal. After a few moments, her outfit changed back to her casual clothes she always wore around Chaldea. Much better, Issei said, looking at a nostalgic sight. He extended his elbow out for Mash to take, which she took nervously. No need to be so nervous, Mashu. I plan to make this the best date you'll ever have. Plus, I promised you before I would show you around my hometown, so there will be no better opportunity than this. Mash nodded in understanding and leaned on Issei's arm. And thus their date began. Issei took Mash to a late lunch downtown and later to the museum. They spent time walking around town and even bought some clothes for Mash. When Mash asked why, Issei only replied with, "Well, you're probably going to be staying for a while since we're not sure how to go to and from Chaldea yet." Mash seemed to understand where her senpai was coming from. For all she knew, she was stuck there, although she didn't mind that at all. As sunset approached, Issei led Mash home. He intended to introduce the girl who had such a large impact on his life to his parents. He looked to the side and saw Mash fidgeting nervously. Issei put his hand on her back to calm her and gave her a warm smile. "Don't worry. I told them all about what happened to me while I was away. To be frank, they have been wanting to meet you for a long time. You'll be fine," Issei reassured her, and Mash seemed to relax a bit. They made it home and were stopped in front of the door. "Ready?" Issei asked. Mash took a moment. She looked at Issei and did something not even she expected. She had Issei on the. It took him completely by surprise. He didn't expect that from her. She took a deep breath. "Yes, I'm ready." Issei took a second to recover from the surprise, then opened the door and led Mash inside. "Ka-san! Tu-san! I'm home," Issei announced as he came in. "Welcome home, Issei. How did it go?" Issei's mother asked from the kitchen. "Nothing bad happened, right?" Issei's father asked from the living room. "Well, things were complicated in the beginning, but well, things worked out. In fact, I have someone for you to meet," Issei said while holding Mash's hand. There was a moment of silence, as it seemed that both Issei's mother and father stopped what they were doing. Suddenly there was scrambling in the other rooms as the pair came into the front hall. There was surprise on their faces as they saw their son holding hands with a girl a bit shorter than him who had an intense blush on her face, while their son had a beaming smile. "Is she? Could it really be?" The pair couldn't hide their surprise. "Tu-san, Ka-san, I would like you to meet Mashu, my girlfriend," Issei said with pride while Mash's face turned an even deeper shade of red. Mash managed to recollect herself somewhat and removed herself from Issei's arm. "Good afternoon, Senpai's parents. I'm Mash Purelight. And this little one is Vo. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." Mash politely bowed with Vo on her shoulder. The Hyde pair were stunned for a moment, but then suddenly Issei's father seemed to realize something. "Wait. Isn't that the name of the girl who you were with in the other world?" His words seemed to make his wife realize this as well. "Yes, this is her. Like I said, things started off complicated. Let's go into the living room and I'll explain." After he said that, they all went to the living room and Issei explained about how the letter was a trap set by a fallen angel and how he summoned Mash to help fend her off. After that, the devils from his school came and chased the fallen off, and how they set up a meeting tomorrow to exchange information. The parents had a grave look on their face, clearly upset that someone tried to prey on their son's desires in order to kill him. They hoped this event didn't permanently scar their son from trusting anyone who shows interest in him, but from the look on his face as he was standing next to Mash, it didn't seem to be a problem at the moment. The pair bowed their heads deeply to Mash. "Thank you so much, Mash-san. Not only did you protect our son when he disappeared, but you also saved him again from what was essentially an assassination attempt. There are no words to truly express how thankful we are." Mash shook her head. "I'm the one who should be thankful. If it weren't for Senpai, I would have died a long time ago." Even when his memory was gone, he still did his best to help everyone. He went beyond what any human could have, and because of that, everyone was saved. In all honesty, I should be apologizing on behalf of Chaldea for essentially kidnapping your son." This time Mash bowed her head to the parents. The two stared at Mash a bit, then smiled. "She is a really good girl," they both thought. They were happy their son met someone like her. Issei's mom put on a mischievous smile and addressed the girl. Hey Mash-san, it's okay if you start calling me Oka-san." Mash immediately sat up straight and started blushing again. Jumping in with the momentum, Issei's father said his piece as well. "Then you can call me Ota-san as well, and we'll just call you Mashu." Mash didn't know how to respond and looked to her senpai for help. She was met with a slightly blushing Issei who clearly couldn't hide his happiness. He looked at her. "See? I told you there was nothing to worry about." As things were starting to heat up, they were all suddenly interrupted. "HKRZZRT and anyone here KZRT." Something that sounded like a broken transmission was coming in. The Hyde pair were confused and alarmed, but Issei and Mash looked at each other, able to figure out what was happening. Issei created a magic circle with his hand and deactivated the bounded field around his house that blocked communications from coming in and out through magic. With that, the signal cleared up. Mash. Can you hear me? Come in. What's the situation? Seems everything is fine. A hologram appeared in the living room and on the display was Da Vinci. The parents were even more confused, but Issei was the first to respond. Hey Da Vinci-chan. Long time no see. How have things been? Issei asked casually. Da Vinci gave Issei a wry smile. Things have been hectic around here since you defeated Goichia. Lots of paperwork and interrogations. Don't you mean interviews? Mash asked. No. Da Vinci said with a smile that clearly indicated that she didn't like the talks she had with the Mages Association. But never mind me. What was happening to you, Fujiwara-kun? My readings earlier indicated you were in trouble. Da Vinci said with concern. It's a bit of a long story. Issei then explained what happened, just like with his parents before. I see. Well, at least things worked out in the end. It looks like that battle was the catalyst you needed to reconnect with us. Those were my thoughts exactly. But the question is, where do we go from here? They all sat and thought until someone spoke up. Sorry to interrupt your meeting, but would you mind introducing your friend to us, Issei? His mother interjected. Issei laughed, embarrassed that he forgot that his parents were in the room. Right, sorry. Tu-san, Ka-san, this is Da Vinci-san, the other person from Chaldea that I told you about who helped me a lot. Da Vinci bowed to Issei's parents. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I am Leonardo da Vinci, but you can call me Da Vinci-chan, she said with a wink and a peace sign. Issei's parents greeted her in return. Our son told us about you, but it's still hard to believe that you are the Leonardo da Vinci considered, well. Issei's mom was referring to Da Vinci being a woman. It's been a while since I got that reaction. It's fine, I am the real deal, but I figured, instead of coming back as a crotchety old man, I would take the form of the most beautiful thing in the world. And what could be more beautiful than the Mona Lisa? Da Vinci puffed out her chest to display how proud she was about her decision. We just finished thanking Mashu, but we would like to extend our thanks to you and all your staff for taking care of our son. Issei's mom continued. Da Vinci had a complicated expression. Well, it's no problem, but Mashu already told us about how he got there, and we forgive you all. It was an accident, and in the end our son became stronger for it. So we'll let bygones be bygones. Issei's father interjected. Da Vinci gave a grateful smile and turned to Issei. I see where you got your kindness and understanding from Ritsuka-kun. Issei had a bit of a shy smile on his face from that compliment. However, Issei's father had a question. I've been meaning to ask, why do you call Issei Ritsuka? Issei was the one to answer. I mentioned to you before, when I was transported I lost my memory, which included my name. So they gave me an alias until I remembered it, which was Fujiwara Ritsuka. By the time I got my memory back, so much time had passed that I got used to being called that, and even though I told them my real name, I also recognized the name they gave me as my real name too. So I said they can keep calling me Ritsuka. The parents nodded in understanding at their son's words. But now that the pleasantries were done, they had to refocus on the problem at hand. So, what should we do? Mash asked. Well, we should establish a summoning zone for you so that we send reinforcements to aid you. On top of that, we need to create a way to travel to and from, not only for you but for Mash as well. Issei was confused. Why for Mash as well? She didn't raise shift to get to your location. Rather, it seems you summoned her like someone would summon a traditional servant. Issei was surprised by this revelation. But I thought you needed a catalyst to summon a servant. Not only that, Mashu is a demi-servant. I thought it didn't work the same for her. Da Vinci shook her head. I don't know. I don't have enough data to know the reason yet. The only thing I really have to go off of is the fact that Mash became a servant thanks to you, and you two have a strong connection. The thing that gets me the most is the matter of what the catalyst could be. I know what the catalyst is. Drake spoke for everyone to hear. Hello Drake, how are you? Issei's mom addressed the dragon happily. I'm the same. Thanks for asking. You know what the catalyst is? Da Vinci asked, surprised. Yes. It was acquired during partner's battle with Goichia. Issei was surprised yet again at the new bombshell. I picked something up at the Temple of Time? After we thought Mash died, partner used her shield to fight Goichia, and when he dealt the final blow the shield dissipated into magic particles. When that happened, partner unintentionally absorbed some of the magic into the boosted gear. In other words, Mash's shield is a part of the boosted gear now. Everyone was stunned at what they were just told. Da Vinci nodded in understanding. I see. Then with the catalyst absorbed by Ritsuka-kun along with his magic and strong bond with Mash, he was able to do a successful servant summon without the help of Chaldea's. Da Vinci was in contemplation. It's good that we figured this out, but we're getting off track, Mash said, trying to get back on topic. Right, sorry. Is there anywhere where we can set up a summoning circle? Asked Issei. I'm not detecting any ley lines near you, but there is a ton of magic around you. Yeah, that's my doing. Once I came back, I laid runes all over town for me to use just in case. I especially set runes in and around my house as well as a bounded field to protect it from the supernatural, which was why you were having trouble contacting us earlier. I see. Then in that case it may be possible for you to create a pseudo-ley line in your own home. You just need a place to put it. We have room in the basement, Issei's mother said. That would be the best way to keep it secret, right? Issei's father followed up. That works. In that case, once that has been set up, I have a few requests for the first ones you should send to help me. After that, Issei and Mash set up the magic circle in the basement. Da Vinci told them that it would take time to stabilize and should be done by the end of tomorrow, but for now she would continue to run diagnostics. Issei's parents led Mash to a spare room and Issei brought the things they bought on the date to her new room. Everyone was exhausted from all the excitement of the day, so they all retired for the night. Issei lay in his bed going over the crazy day he just had. He had been tricked by a fallen who tried to kill him, reunited with his kohai, met and set up a meeting with the devils, gone on a date with Mash, brought her home to his parents, and re-established contact with Chaldea. All in all, one hectic day. As he was beginning to drift into sleep, he heard a knock on his door. Come in, Issei said. The door opened and Mash was there in her nightwear. She nervously moved in the room. Senpai, if it's all right. Can I sleep with you? Issei was frozen. His kohai kept on finding ways to surprise him, and it had been less than a day. He shook his head to get out of his daze, then responded. If that's what you want. He couldn't keep his voice from slightly shaking. Mash closed the door behind her and lay down next to Issei. She moved herself so that she could wrap herself around Issei's left arm. Issei was having a hard time keeping himself calm. His old personality was screaming at him to take her here and now, while his current personality was doing its best not to scare her off. While Issei was having this inner dilemma, Mash spoke to him. I'm sorry, Senpai. What for? I did a lot of things today based on my own feelings and didn't give you a chance to say yes or no. Issei was wondering what she was talking about, but she continued. I had you without asking. You bought clothes for me because I needed some, and you and your family provided me a room out of the kindness of your hearts. I should have. She was interrupted by Anna from Issei. She was surprised but melted into the. Issei broke off the after a minute. You're overthinking it, Mashu. Remember, I was the one who introduced you as my girlfriend. Nobody made me do it. I did it because I meant it. I want to be with you, Mashu. Although maybe I should be apologizing since I didn't ask if that was okay with you. Mash had tears forming in her eyes, but she was truly happy at what Issei said. This might sound ridiculous, but I think it might have been fate that we met. The time I spent away when I returned home was truly lonely for me. We have been through so much, I couldn't just move on from it. I felt the same. Even though it was less time for me, I felt it when you left. Chaldea felt so empty without you, and while I tried to keep myself distracted, I couldn't help but want to see you as soon as possible. The two were pouring out all of the emotions they had bottled up. Then Issei decided to make the next move. Hey Mashu. He brought her in close. Why don't I show you just how much you mean to me? He locked eyes with Mash, seeking her confirmation. Mash stared back, processing what Issei said until finally her entire face turned red. If one looked closely, you could swear you'd see steam coming out of her head. Finally she responded once she got over her embarrassment. If it's with you, then I don't mind, she said shyly. Issei was celebrating in his mind but kept his cool. He didn't want to mess up this moment. That was important for both of them. Needless to say, either of them got much sleep that night. Issei's alarm went off, stirring him from his sleep. He tried to move his arm but found that something was holding it down. He groggily looked to his side to see what was holding his arm down, only to see Mash there, asleep naked next to him, using his arm as a pillow. Issei immediately became awake at seeing her state, briefly wondering why she wasn't wearing anything. Then last night's events came rushing back to him. I did it! I finally lost my virginity! Issei could barely contain his happiness. Tears of happiness streamed down his face. He felt like a new man and was thinking about what to do next. Next to him, Mash stirred and he realized the alarm was still going off. With his free hand, he turned off the alarm. He turned to look at Mash again and saw her resting peacefully on his arm. Her face looked so calm and happy. A small smile made its way to his face as he used his hand to brush some of her hair out of her face. He resolved himself again to do whatever it takes to protect her. Mash began to stir and slowly opened her eyes. She tiredly looked up at Issei, who was smiling at her. Good morning, Mashu. Did you sleep well? He asked. Mash sat up from her position and rubbed her eyes. Yes, thank you for asking, she said tiredly. She looked at Issei some more before she realized not only were they in the same bed but they were both naked. Her face went red and she hurriedly tried to figure out what was happening. Just like Issei, eventually the memories of the night before came back to her, and she calmed down somewhat. She shyly looked at Issei. How are you? She said, trying to make things less awkward. Issei chuckled a bit. I'm fine. More than that, actually. I don't think I've ever felt this good in my entire life before. Issei was being completely honest, and that made Mash blush more but smile happily. The moment was interrupted by a knock on the door. Issei. Are you up? You need to get ready for school, Issei's mom said through the door before opening it and walking in. She stopped in front of the entrance when she saw her son and his girlfriend in bed together, clearly refreshed after doing the deed. Jigoro! Issei's done it! He's finally done it! Issei's mother yelled to her husband as she ran out of the room. Really? Does that mean we're finally going to have grandchildren? It seems our time has finally come, Mickey. Issei's father was also yelling in happiness. Meanwhile, Issei and Mash's faces were blushing like crazy from the pair's antics. I'm sorry about them. Despite how much they love me, they didn't have much faith I would ever get with a girl due to my preferences and personality around it, Issei said, exasperated. After he said that, Mash recalled when Issei regained his memories. He told her, Dr. Roman, and Da Vinci about who he was and what his life was like before he came to Chaldea, including his perverseness and how unashamed he was. Normally stuff like that would disgust Mash. It's the reason why she always gave a cold stare to Blackbird whenever he started talking about his hobbies. But she couldn't bring herself to act that way towards her senpai. They had simply been through too much together. It's fine. They were only worried about their son's future, she said with determined eyes. Why, yeah, well, anyways, we should get ready. I'll lead you to school so you know where to go. As the two got ready for the day, they checked in with Da Vinci about today's schedule. The Haida couple were playfully teasing the two about their intimate night together while Issei's eyebrow twitched in annoyance. After having breakfast, the two of them headed out. Issei, Mash, and Fo, who was on Mash's shoulder, were heading to Ku Academy, walking closely together. So what are you going to do to pass the time? Issei asked inquisitively. I'll probably walk around town and get more accustomed to it before meeting back up with you, Mash said thoughtfully. Sounds good, but be careful. That Fallen is still around and she may have more allies, so keep your guard up, Issei warned. I will, senpai, don't worry. As the two got closer to the school, students also on their way to school noticed them. Almost all of them had looks of surprise on their faces. There were whispers of no way. Is that what I think it is? There's a girl actually hanging out with that pervert. Is that the girl who sent the love letter to Haida the other day? Wait, so it wasn't a prank? Who would be crazy or desperate enough to want to go out with Haida? He must have done something to her. There's no way Haida would actually attract a girl that cute. Just as usual, gossip spread like wildfire and got progressively more extreme and disturbing. Issei scowled in annoyance at the other students' comments, while Mash looked at him worriedly. She tried to think of what to do to make him feel better, but before she knew it, they were at the school gates. All the students were staring at the pair, like they were looking at some mythical animal. Issei turned to her. We're here, so I will meet back up with you after class is over for the meeting. Enjoy yourself today? He did his best to not look perturbed. All right, I will see you later, senpai. He was about to leave when Mash stopped him. Oh, senpai, you forgot something. Issei turned around confused but was suddenly met with a "on the" from Mash. Everyone there was stunned at the girl's action. Issei just absent-mindedly put his fingers on his as he stared back at Mash. Mash gave Issei a beaming smile. Have a good day, senpai. And she walked off. Issei stood there dazed for a bit before he finally came to his senses and understood something once again. I'm the luckiest person ever. Naturally, the scene at the front gate led to a storm of questions and accusations from the other students. At the forefront of it all were his two friends, who were crying about the unfairness of it all. How? How did you manage to do it? Matsuda wailed at him. Don't tell me that love letter turned out to be real. Motohama cried. Tell us how you did it. They said to Issei simultaneously, while shaking him back and forth. Issei was exasperated, not only from the students' interrogation of him all day but from his friends' overreaction. Part of him wanted to tease them and rub it in their faces, but nothing came to mind that wouldn't simply be a straight insult. So he decided to be honest instead. There really isn't anything I can tell you to help. I just got really lucky with the girl in question, he said, smiling wryly. Depending on how you looked at it, he got incredibly unlucky since the letter was a bait to try and kill him, but things worked out in the end. The perverted duo didn't buy it. Come on, man, tell us your secret. If whatever you did worked on her, it can work on other girls too. Motohama begged. Yeah, man, come on and share the wealth. Matsuda asked. The class gave the three a cold glare at their conversation. Like anyone would want to date them. I'm still convinced Hayata did something to that girl to make her do that. Those two, seriously. Could they sink any lower? Comments like that were being tossed around. Shut up. Nobody asked you. Matsuda yelled at the peanut gallery. Issei would normally be annoyed by the class's gossip, but he was too happy about MASH to care about anything at the moment. Man, you seem happy. Kiri came up to Issei's desk and talked to him. Can you blame me? I've never felt this good in my entire life. Well, no, not really. So much for not having enough free time. Well, there were extenuating circumstances. I'll tell you about it later. Issei whispered the last part to her. Kiri gave him a nod and a perverted smile. By the way, good job on losing your virginity, Kiri casually said. The class went dead silent at her words, unable to believe what just came out of her mouth. Issei did his best not to react. He knew that Kiri just set up a minefield for him, and he had to do his best to not blow himself up. What makes you think I lost my virginity? He asked with as straight a face he could muster. Simple. Your entire posture and disposition has changed. You don't carry yourself like those two idiots do. She was always so observant about these things. It was actually scary how good she was at it. I've been different ever since I came back. I don't understand what you're implying. Part of Issei was genuinely curious about what she was picking out to find these things out. All right. Let's do it this way, she said mischievously. Are you a virgin? Issei couldn't respond. He knew if he said yes he wouldn't be convincing at all, and if he said no then the class would go nuts. Damn you, Kiria! Issei thought to himself. Before anyone could say anything, the teacher finally walked into the classroom and told everyone to go to their seats. Issei breathed a sigh of relief as classes started, but he knew that today's headaches were only just beginning. Meanwhile, Mash was walking through town, exploring more of the sights and getting used to her new home away from home. She had Issei on impulse in order to brighten his mood, but maybe she just made a bigger headache for him by drawing so much attention. She frowned when she remembered how terribly the other students were to him. The rumors escalated to radical degrees just from her standing next to him. It's not fair. He has done so much for everyone without asking for anything in return, and they treat him like some criminal. Mash was getting more worked up thinking about it, but suddenly she was brought out of her thoughts by a communication coming in from Chaldea. Hey Mash. How are things going? Da Vinci asked cheerfully. Her expression changed when she saw Mash looking down. Did something happen? I just came from Senpai's school. Oh? And how was your first visit to a normal school? Well, I didn't see much. I just went up to the front gate with Senpai. The other students that saw us were so horrible to him. Some of them accused him of doing something to me to force me to be near him. Mash had angry tears in her eyes. Da Vinci looked surprised, mostly at Mash's attitude but also at what she said. Well, high school can be a dangerous place in a different sense. One's social standing makes or breaks how much fun you'll have. Ritsuka-kun already told us that his reputation at school was low because he was open about his preferences, but by the look on your face it seems more serious than he let on. Mash looked down. She wanted to help but didn't know how. Well, there isn't anything we can do about it right now. That's something that takes time to fix. On that note, I'm calling you to talk about your condition. Mash looked up from her brooding to look at Da Vinci. While nothing seems to be wrong from my scans on you, we don't know how long you will be able to use your servant abilities. It could be a few hours or it could be permanent. Until I can bring you back for a proper examination, there is no way to tell for sure. Mash was worried about that. If her power failed her at a critical moment, Ritsuka could be in danger. This needed to be solved ASAP. Be careful out there. You just need to last until the end of the day. Once the transport circle is set up, we will be able to properly examine and treat you. Understood, I will do my best. Da Vinci nodded in confirmation and ended the call. Mash continued to wander the town until the appointed time. As classes came to an end, Issei was waiting at his desk for Ria's subordinate to come pick him up. As he was waiting, his phone rang. He dug it out of his pocket and answered. Hello? How are you holding up, Fujimaru-kun? Asked Da Vinci. I'm fine. Why do you ask? Mash told me about what happened this morning. I know you said you didn't have a good reputation, but that was just harsh. Issei made a sour face. It's not necessarily an excuse, but I'm used to it. High school is almost as dramatic as shows portray them to be, except there is no script to follow and no one is guaranteed a happy ending. You sound like a soldier who has seen too much on the battlefield. Issei chuckled. In a way I am. Da Vinci chuckled as well. Anyways, I'm calling to reconfirm the monitoring of the meeting. Yeah, someone should be here to get me soon. Hopefully we'll learn about the state of things in more detail after today. I will also have some of your servants on standby in case things go south. Hopefully it won't get to that point. Ria's senpai is a more reasonable person than most others, if you say so. All right, I will return to monitoring duty. Be careful. With that, the call ended. A few minutes later, the class began to stir as someone entered the room. The prince of the school, Kiba Yuto, walked in, and immediately all the girls began squealing and asking to go out with him. Kiba scanned the room until he spotted Issei and began walking towards him. All the girls in the room started making horrified screams, telling Kiba to stay away from Issei and that he would corrupt him. Matsuda and Motohama just hissed Kiba. As he got closer, Hayata-kun, Ryaspucho asked me to come pick you up for the meeting. Issei got up and grabbed his bag. All right, but we have to stop at the front gate first to pick up my friend. Kiba nodded and they both headed out while the class was in an uproar. As they were approaching the front gate, they both noticed a commotion happening out front. Issei tried to focus on what was going on and immediately scowled. A couple of guys were hitting on Mash while she was waiting at the front gate. Issei let out a bit of killing intent before he was noticed by Mash. She immediately left the group of boys and walked right up to Issei and Kiba. Sorry for the wait, there wasn't any trouble, was there? Issei asked, trying his best not to be perturbed. No, senpai, I didn't have any trouble. People were just talking to me, that's all. She did her best to try and calm his anger. The surroundings started to become noisy again, so Kiba took that as their cue to leave. Now that we retrieved your friend, let's head to the meeting. Follow me, please. Kiba led the pair to the clubroom while the eyes of the other students were trained on them. Once they were out of sight of the other students, Issei told Mash to don her servant form. Mash complied and changed to her servant form and continued with Kiba. Eventually they make it to the clubroom. Kiba knocks on the door and Rias from the other side tells them to come in. Kiba opens the door and guides them inside. Issei looked around the room and saw Rias sitting at her desk, Akino waiting loyally beside her, and Kaneko, who was munching on sweets. He expected to see them since they were with Rias when they confronted the fallen. Who he wasn't expecting to be there were the student council president Sona Shirtorai and the vice president Tsubaki Shinra. He knew they were devils but wasn't expecting them to be a part of this meeting. Mash looked more on guard at the unexpected people. Rias and Sona took notice of this. My apologies, Hayata-kun, I should have let you know that I was going to invite Sona beforehand. Rias apologized. Sona pushed up her glasses and addressed the pair. Since both Rias and I are the co-rulers of this territory, we thought it would be more productive to have both of us talk to you so that we can be as clear as possible. Issei nodded in understanding and both he and Mash took a seat across from Kaneko. Now then, since we're all settled, let's get this meeting underway. Sona began. You know me as Sona Shirtorai, but in actuality I am. Let me guess. Your last name is actually Citri? Issei cut her off. The devils' faces were full of surprise, Sona's especially. How did you know? It wasn't that hard. Once I knew you and Rias-senpai were devils and that Rias had the same last name as one of the 72 pillars. It wasn't hard to figure out you were using an alias," Issei said casually. "On that note, I have two things to say about that. First, very creative with the name Sona-senpai," Issei said, his voice loaded with sarcasm. "Second, that name is just waiting for a degenerate to make fun of it. Just think about it." Sona wasn't happy with Issei's criticism, but when she thought about it, what he pointed out was very apparent. "So you are aware of the 72 pillars?" Rias jumped in. "Yes. Although most of my info comes from what I read in the Ars Goetia, the book of demonology." "I didn't realize you were so well read," said Sona. "Well, yeah. I made sure to do my homework once I became aware of the supernatural." Issei closed his eyes as he recalled what he read. "Gremory is a strong duke of hell who governs 26 legions of demons. He tells all things past, present, and future about hidden treasures and procures the love of women, young and old, but especially maidens. He is depicted as a beautiful woman with the crown of a duchess tied around his waist and riding a camel." Tsubaki spoke for the first time, with interest. "Do you know the Citri as well?" The queen didn't notice her king's silencing look. Issei sat and thought, trying to remember what he read again. "If I recall, Citri is a great prince of hell, reigning over 60 legions of demons. He causes men to love women and vice versa, and can cause people to bear themselves naked if desired. He is depicted with the face of a leopard and the wings of a griffin." Everybody turned to see Sona, whose normally composed face was now incredibly flustered. Akino was the first to say something. Era Kaicho, I didn't know your family had such a skill. Are you secretly a sadist that likes to make people expose themselves?" she said playfully. "We're getting off track," Sona said, trying to change the subject. "So if you knew about us, why didn't you approach us, as we are the rulers of this territory?" Issei made a slightly unpleasant face. "First, as far as I was aware, this was a human town run by humans, so I didn't see any need to approach someone who could potentially be an enemy." The devils didn't miss the subtle accusation in Issei's words. "Second, well, it's more personal, but let's just say my last interaction with someone who shared a name with the demon god pillars nearly cost me my life." The devils made complicated faces. "So he's had an encounter with a pillar family before. And by the sound of it, it wasn't good." Rias and Sona both thought this. They could understand not being trusting of devils, let alone those of pillar families. "I'm sorry, but could you elaborate?" "As far as I know, no pillar families have mentioned interacting with a human from our territory," Sona asked. "Sorry, but I'm not sure I trust you enough to tell you that." Sona looked sour at that. "Putting that aside, I want to know what exactly makes this town your territory?" Issei's eyes narrowed. Rias sat up and responded. "It isn't something official in the way you're thinking. As I'm sure you know, humanity at large does not know of the existence of the supernatural. So we don't own this location in the sense of a nation ruling the people. However, the devils have purchased and developed a lot of this town, this school included. The territory claim is to try and keep other factions like the fallen angels out. So much for that," Issei thought. "I see." He relaxed a bit. "It seems that if we're going to have a productive meeting, we need to ease his worries about us first," thought Rias. She turned to Issei's companion, who had been silently watching and listening the entire time. "I'm sorry, but we got interrupted at the beginning. I know Hayata-kun knows us, but you don't, so why don't we do this properly? I am Rias Gremory, and these are my servants, Akino Himejima, Kiba Yudo, and Kaneko Tuju." The others nodded to Mash. "And I, as you know by now, am Sona Citri, and this is my queen Tsubaki Shinra." Tsubaki did the same as the others. Mash bowed her head. "It's nice to meet you all. I am Mash Kirilite, master's servant." Akino made a small smile. "Ufufa. Don't you mean girlfriend? The rumors about you spreading around school have been quite interesting," Akino teased. Both Issei and Mash's face turned to a small blush. Although a moment later Mash's face turned serious. "What kind of rumors?" Issei was surprised by Mash's expression. Akino tilted her head in thought. "Well, a lot of them aren't good to say the least, but we know it's all just baseless claims from jealous boys and over-imaginative girls." Mash seemed to frown at that. Issei, seeing her down, patted her back and gave her a grateful smile. "It can't be helped, Mashu. Like I said before, even though I've changed, it doesn't erase the damaged reputation I had before." Sona pushed her glasses up yet again. Well, at least you seem to have gained some awareness after your disappearance. I can't tell you how many complaints I get from the girls of the school about you and your friends' antics. Although nowadays I know that the complaints are mostly about your friends, even though your name gets thrown in most of the time. Issei let out an exasperated sigh, knowing all too well what the Kaicho was talking about. I'm sorry, Kaicho, both for before and for my friends' antics now, he said tiredly. As far as I'm concerned, you've learned your lesson, so it's water under the bridge. Do try to rein your friends in though. That's impossible, he said with a straight face, surprising Sona. Those two are hopelessly desperate, and as you're aware, it has gotten me into more trouble than I could hope to prevent. Being their friend for so long, I can honestly say that you would have a better chance of killing them than making them change their ways. There was an awkward silence in the room before Issei spoke up again. All right, I think that's enough small talk. Let's get down to business. Sona straightened herself up and continued from where they left off. So the reason you didn't approach us is because you didn't know if we could be trusted or not? To Issei's nod of confirmation, she continued. Well, be rest assured that as long as you don't present a threat to this town or the people in it, we won't act against you. Issei had a confused look on his face. He didn't expect to be accused of harming the town, but when he thought about it, it made sense from an outsider's perspective. Then I guess we don't have any problems, he said nonchalantly. If you don't mind, Hayato-kun, we would like to know what happened to you when you disappeared and if we are going to have to be on the lookout for other people disappearing too. Rias inquired. Issei leaned back in his seat. Sorry, but that is classified information. As to your second inquiry, no, you won't have to worry about other people disappearing. What happened to me was an accident born of chance. The pair of kings looked discerningly at the boy, unhappy that he wasn't willing to tell them anything. Although his wording caught their attention. Unlike before, when he implied something more personal, he went out of his way to say that what happened was classified information. It didn't feel like he was playing himself up just to sound cool, but that he was working for someone in which to keep their identity secret. We aren't going to have a productive conversation if you're unwilling to share information, Hayato-kun, Sona stated. That's fair, so let's do this. We'll take turns sharing something we know with each other, and go from there. Issei proposed. That's fair, said Rias. Why don't we start with what you know about the supernatural, then we can fill in the blanks from there. Issei nodded. Well, I know that you guys had a three-way war with the angels and fallen angels and that the original Mao have died. I also know that you all aren't as bad as most scriptures portray you, despite my hesitancy towards you. Rias nodded and began. After the war, Devilkind was devastated. Normal population growth was no longer a feasible option. Thankfully, one of the current Mao, Ajuka Beelzebub, came up with a solution. She took out a crimson chess piece from her desk and set it on the table. He had created the evil piece system, which allowed devils to reincarnate other beings into devils as well. This would simultaneously increase the devil population while giving high-class devils a powerful subordinate. Issei had a serious look on his face. And the people who are reincarnated are okay with this? I understand your worry, Hayato-kun, and I won't lie and say no one abuses this system, but neither Rias or myself would ever forcefully reincarnate someone, as there are benefits as well as risks to it. To Issei's inclination, Sona continued, beings who are resurrected will gain a benefit based on what piece is used as well as an extended lifespan, and if the reincarnated devil becomes strong enough, they may go and start their own peerages. With that said, if someone unruly were to become a devil and go rogue, then that would be problematic. Devils who go rogue become strays, and stray devils tend to become more monstrous in both nature and appearance. This is because their master is no longer able to monitor and control their power. Oh, so that's what I've been fighting for these past months. Issei seemed to realize something while hitting his palm with his fist. The devils were momentarily stunned at what he said, but Rias seemed to understand what he meant. Wait. You were the one getting rid of the strays that were popping up in our territory the past few months. Sona seemed to be just as surprised. So that was your doing? We thought that the strays escaped when they figured out we were on to their trail. Issei had a small smile on his face, but before he could say anything, Mash interrupted. Master, you were fighting by yourself? Mash's voice was filled with concern. Yeah, I was. It was necessary for me to become stronger, so I went out and trained myself. Running into the strays was happenstance, but proved to be a great boost to my abilities. Mash chuckled at the pun Issei said while the others looked bewildered. This revelation had them reevaluate Issei's abilities. Now Rias wanted him in her peerage even more now. I've relied on all of you for so long, I didn't want to just sit back when we reunited. Besides, I needed to make sure I survived long enough to meet you all again, Issei said to Mash with a smile. While the two were having a moment, Sona cleared her throat to get back on track. In any case, this clears up some mysteries we've had for the past few months. In any case, Hayate-kun, I promise you the only time I would ever revive someone without their permission is if they were dead or dying and it was the only way to save them. Issei stared at Rias a moment, then nodded. All right, I'll trust you on this. But if I see someone doing such a thing against their will, I will take matters into my own hands. Got it? Both Rias and Sona nodded. All right, our turn. Why don't you tell us something about what happened to you? Issei gave Rias a sour look but thought about what he could say. As I said, it's classified. Surely there is something you can tell us that won't put your organization at risk. I didn't say anything about an organization. You didn't have to. Your wording for that as compared to before told us all we needed to know, Sona said. Issei had a troubled look. I messed up, he thought to himself, trying to think of something to talk about. He finally came up with something, since it was going to be a part of a favor he was going to ask them at the end. All right, since you've told me about devil servants, it should be fair for me to tell you about my servants, he said with a smile. Mash had a look of surprise on her face, not expecting her master to speak about something so vital. Rias smiled. Yes, that's fine. I have been wondering about her ever since you made her appear against the fallen. Also, did you say servants plural? Asked Sona. I did. Mash is my main servant, but I have many others whom I can call upon. Issei took a moment, then began his explanation. I don't know the specifics of how the summoning works, but essentially the summoning spell I use allows me to summon beings of great power who have left their mark on the world. By mark, do you mean that they are famous? Asked Sona. Yes, but that is not the whole of it. While most servants are famous beings from history, there are exceptions, like Mashu next to me. Issei lifted his hand, gesturing to Mash. Mashu is a demi-servant. Basically, she is a human who was granted power by a heroic spirit who merged with her soul. The devils in the room were astonished, and were now looking at Mash with great interest. I know you said you don't know the specifics, but do you know how to summon someone in particular? Asked Rias. Issei folded his arms and tilted his head. Well, I'm only aware of 2 methods of summoning. The way I use, unfortunately, gives me no control over who I summon unless it is someone I've summoned before. The other method can summon a specific servant, but requires a catalyst that is in some way connected to that servant. The detail I'm missing, for your information, is the construction of the magic circle that is necessary for summoning the servant with all the things it needs to maintain its existence. The kings nodded in understanding and were grateful for the info. Now then, before it gets too late, we should move to the main topic, Issei said, trying to move things forward. Why did the fallen attack me? Rias readjusted herself and answered. She said something about a sacred gear. Do you know what she was referring to? Issei was silent, debating if he should say anything about his gear. He decided he should. Yes, I am aware. During my time away, my gear awakened. I don't see what that has to do with anything. As far as I was aware, sacred gears are common enough where going out your way to kill someone with one wouldn't be necessary, right? Sona eyed Hayate. That depends on what sacred gear you have. She gave a look implying her question. Sorry, but again, I'm not sure I'm ready to trust you with that information. While we agreed not to be hostile to each other, I would rather keep my cards to myself. If you want to know, then prove I can trust you, he said uncaringly. What would we have to do? Rias asked. It isn't something that's going to be given just by doing one thing. Trust is built over time. The redhead looked somewhat down. If you want to start, how about we talk about how to deal with the fallen first? Rias perked up at this. Then, how about you become a member of my peerage? No, Issei said flatly. Rias slightly pouted. Why not? It's not like there is nothing in it for you. Not only would you get the strength of whatever piece I use on you as well as an extended lifespan, but it would also help with your dream. My dream? Issei was completely lost. Don't you still want to be a harem king? Issei was silent for a while. His expression was blank. Rias thought that she got him with that, showing a small smile. Mash seemed like she wanted to protest. Suddenly there was a powerful aura emanating from Issei. I just got attacked by someone who preyed on my desires. And you try to bribe me using the same method? His voice was low but conveyed how unhappy he was. Oh shit! I stepped on a landmine. Rias cursed herself for how reckless she was and her smile disappeared. She let her desperation for trying to find solutions to get out of her engagement cloud her judgment. I am sorry, Haida-kun. That was thoughtless of me, she hurriedly said. Issei continued to glare at her for a bit before he took a deep breath. The answer is no. As you already figured out, I'm working for someone already, so becoming a devil would just complicate my allegiances. That aside, there is another reason I can't become your servant. Rias looked despondent but curious. And why is that? Because I have my pride as a master. I have recruited many beings under me, and they have been with me through so much. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say I owe them my life many times over. What would it say about me if the person they chose to follow and believe in became subservient to another? In a way, it is like undermining their trust in me. It tells them that they put their faith in someone who is unsure in their own decisions. That is not something I want them to believe. He paused and with power behind his eyes looked Rias directly in her eyes. My life is no longer mine to throw away. There are too many others counting on me. Rias and Sona stared at Issei in amazement. They never expected something like this from him. It expressed more eloquently than anything how much his time away affected him, and how much it matters to him. They would be lying if they said that they didn't gain more respect for him, both being masters themselves. Rias had recollected herself and addressed Issei once again. I'm sorry again, Haida-kun, that was thoughtless of me. I shouldn't be using your plight to try and gain a new peace, especially since you went through the effort to try and be the good guy about never gaining servants against their will. Mash chided. Rias looked ashamed, while Issei looked surprised at how Mash just acted. She was normally a calm person, but ever since they reunited she has been more impulsive and emotional when it came to him. Mash was radiating a quiet anger until Foe appeared on her shoulder and started rubbing up against her face. That had seemed to calm her down. Nice job, Foe. What creature is that? Asked Sona. This is Foe. He has also been with us throughout our journeys. As for what he is, we don't actually know, Issei said sheepishly. The devils were now looking at the unknown creature with great interest. Foe, uncaring of the attention he was getting, flew off Mash's shoulder and landed on Issei's. Is he your familiar? Sona asked. No. He doesn't belong to anyone, he just lives at my organization. Issei tilted his head. Although if I remember correctly he used to be Merlin's familiar. The devil's jaws dropped at the revelation. Merlin as in the mage that served King Arthur. Merlin, why yeah, that's the one, Issei said awkwardly. After he was trapped in Avalon he released Foe so that he wouldn't have to be trapped with him. Rias looked at Issei with a serious look. Avalon is a real place? Yes, it's a real place. Many of my servants can vouch for that. Sona stared at Issei a bit longer before speaking. We really need to stop going on these tangents. We should finish discussing the Fallen and how to deal with her and any associates she may have. Everyone readjusted themselves and got back on track. I don't need any protection. I have my servants as well as my own abilities for that. What I want to discuss is locating them and putting a stop to them. Walking around with a big target on my back isn't exactly what I call an enjoyable time. We will do our best to gather information and will share it with you when we come across it. We would like you to do the same as well, said Rias. Even if you are the target, things that happen in this town are of concern to us as well, so if you come across something we would like to be informed as well, said Sona. I will do so unless what is happening is time sensitive. Issei agreed. Rias nodded. Is there anything else that we need to discuss? Well, I actually have a request since you are in charge of the school. The devils looked at him with curiosity. I would like Mashu to enroll in the school and be part of my class. Mash had a surprised look on her face. She wasn't expecting her master to make that request. Sona leaned forward. That can be arranged, but we're going to need your information, Ms. Kirilight. That would be problematic, Issei said awkwardly. The devils were confused, so he elaborated. Mashu technically comes from the future. The devils had stunned looks on their faces. Mashu was born in the year 2000, and she is currently 16. Seeing how it is 2008, using her actual birth date would be problematic. Rias was still contemplating that Mash was from the future but managed to get out a question. She's from the future? Issei gave a tired look. It's complicated and could be a whole nother conversation by itself. Besides, it shouldn't be that surprising considering I summon beings from the past. getting one from the future every now and then shouldn't be that much of a stretch. They could only accept what he said since they don't know how his summoning works. Sona regained her equilibrium. Well, in that case, it will take a bit to create some documents for her. Give us a day to make the necessary arrangements, and we should have her in school the day after tomorrow. Issei had a bright smile on his face. Thank you, Kaicho. I really appreciate it. He turned to Mash. Now you get to experience a normal school life, just like you wanted, you remembered? Mash said with happiness in her voice. Of course I did. There were so many things you said you wanted to experience that you never got to, so I'm going to help you, he said determined. The two were having another moment. This seems to be happening a lot, when Rias cleared her throat. Anything else? Oh right, I will be having my servants roaming the town both to investigate and protect the town. A bunch of them are probably gonna want to blow off some steam too, so letting them have some fun in town shouldn't be too bad. Both Rias and Sona nodded in agreement. As long as they don't cause trouble, it should be fine. Issei had a troubled look on his face. I will tell them, but I apologize beforehand if something happens. Some of my servants have eccentric personalities. He seemed to remember something else. One last thing, does this mean your bat is gonna stop following me? Rias seemed surprised. You knew about my familiar? I did. It's been following me since my return, and it was there when I was attacked, which is why I didn't fight back properly. And since you arrived not long after, it wasn't hard to figure out that it was watching me for you. At this point, Rias had gotten tired of being surprised. I really underestimated you. If I had done things wrong, you probably would have become an enemy, she said self-deprecating, which surprised her peerage. Yes, now that we've interacted and you are aware of us, I will stop having it follow you. Thank you? Issei smiled. Well, I believe we have covered everything, so I think we're done here. Oh. Right, we should exchange contact infos so we can connect with each other whenever it is necessary. They agreed and exchanged contacts. Now that that's done, I will see you all tomorrow. Have a good night. Issei and Mash got up and left the clubroom. After some time, the devils let out a sigh of relief and began to go over the meeting. Well, I would say that was successful but not as fruitful as we intended, said Sona. Yeah. While we have a better understanding of his abilities, we don't know much about what happened or who he is working for. Rias summarized. He has definitely become smarter than how he was before, and his power is nothing to scoff at either. Aquino added, a noticeable blush on her face. At the very least, we know he is stronger than us, but the scope of that is still unknown. We also know he has access to his sacred gear, but we don't know what it is yet, as well as unknown servants of various abilities. We should probably try to figure that out on our own, Sona suggested. No, we shouldn't. If we go snooping and he finds out, we will lose what little trust we were able to gain from him. Even though it's disadvantageous for us, we have to leave him be until he is ready to talk to us, stated Rias. Sona frowned. I don't like it, but you're right. Still, we need to keep an eye on him, as well as his servants that will be coming into town. I'll watch him. I need to make up for my mistake with him. And besides, it is more or less well known he has a crush on me, plus he didn't deny wanting a harem. Everyone realized when Rias pointed it out, and what she was driving at. So you still plan on recruiting him into your peerage, despite what he said? Yes. Even though I understand his points, and even respect him for his dedication to being a master, having him on my side is not only too good to pass up for the long term. Having that power to fight against Riser would be a great boon. I see. Well, that is up to you, but don't let desperation get the better of you again, or you might permanently lose your chance. Rias had a somewhat downcast look on her face when Sona told her that. In any case, I should head to my office to begin the process of making documents for Ms. Kirilite, since doing them favors will help get us on their good side. I will see you all tomorrow. Sona nodded to Rias and Sabaki bowed as they left the room. Aquino looked to Rias and asked what was on everyone's mind. So, what are you going to do? Issei and Mash were walking back home, mulling over the information they received from the meeting. They were holding off talking about it until they got home so that they could discuss it with Da Vinci and Issei's parents. They walked in silence for a while before Mash wrapped herself around Issei's arm. Thank you again, Senpai, for giving me this chance, Mash said happily. It's no problem, Mashu. Like I said, I wanted to give you the chance to experience all the things you missed out on and want to experience. Issei gave a slightly sad look while looking forward. Although if you want to have a normal school experience, then you should probably avoid hanging out with me. I refuse, she said sternly. Issei was shaken a bit by her statement. You're the one I care about, senpai. It doesn't matter what the other kids say, I will stay with you. You're my boyfriend. Mash was passionate about what she was saying, but lost steam at the end due to embarrassment. Issei gave her a gentle smile, then looked forward again. Hey. When it's just the two of us, you can call me Ritsuka. Mash had a surprised look on her face and was blushing intensely. Although now that I say that, it just occurs to me that you're going to have to call me Issei while we're in school. When he said that, it had just occurred to Mash as well. She had never called him that even after he regained his memory, so this was going to be her first time. She thought she might be able to get away with calling him senpai, but it wouldn't make sense for someone who is in the same grade. I will do my best. Aritsuka. She stumbled when she tried to call him by name. Issei found it adorable and chuckled, a warm feeling filling him. Let's hurry back home. When the pair got back home, they immediately gathered the residents and contacted Da Vinci to discuss future plans. Everything seemed to have gone very smoothly. Da Vinci praised. You did a great job of giving information without really giving information. Yes, well, they were the ones who were appealing to me. It was clear they wanted something from me, especially Gremory-senpai. It seemed like she was desperate to get you as her piece. Commented Mash. Right, and it almost cost her. I don't think I've ever seen you so mad before, Fujimaru-kun. Issei's parents were concerned about their son being made upset. What did they do to upset you? Issei's mom asked. They tried to use my desires to recruit me, despite the fact that we had that meeting, because that fallen used my desires to try and assassinate me. His unpleasant feeling was returning just thinking about it. The parents nodded their heads in understanding. They would be upset too if someone tried to use their desires against them too. In any case, we now have a ceasefire with the devils as well as a cooperation pact for the defense of this town. Having the servants able to roam the town will make things easier on us too. On the topic of servants, Da Vinci gave a happy smile to Issei. Your speech to the devils about being a master was really touching. The servants that were watching seemed to have gained a greater respect for you, and I didn't think some of them could care about you more. Issei had an embarrassed look on his face. He had forgotten that they were being watched half the time during the meeting. Yeah, well, I meant what I said. Even if it was accidental, I take my responsibility as a master seriously. Issei stated seriously, and we are thankful for that. It isn't exactly an enviable position considering what the circumstances were. Da Vinci had a somewhat sad look on her face. It's fine. Even if I knew what was gonna happen beforehand, I would do it all again. So don't worry about it. You really know how to cheer someone up, Fujimaru-kun. Well, enough with the depressing stuff. Let's talk about what's next. Da Vinci readjusted herself. The transport circle has been finished for transporting servants and materials currently, which means we can now go to and from Chaldea and your house. It will take some more time for us to adjust it so you can return to Chaldea as well. In the meantime, I need Mash to come back immediately for an examination. We need to confirm her conditions since it was the first time she was summoned like a normal servant. In the meantime, we will have some other servants come over and watch over your safety. The ones you requested are all ready to go, as well as some others who really wish to see you. Issei's parents shifted awkwardly in their seats. Are we gonna have enough room for all of them? Issei's father asked. Da Vinci laughed and comforted the parents. There is no need to worry. The servants can transform into magic particles and stay in that form when they're not active. They can't be seen normally and don't affect anything around them, so it shouldn't be a problem. The parents had a relieved look on their faces. On that note, Martha, Reiku, Boudica, and Jean really want to see you again. Da Vinci made a wry smile. It seems like their motherly and sisterly instincts kicked back and once we were able to contact you. Aren't you lucky? Issei had an embarrassed look on his face while his parents also had wry smiles. Era, am I going to have more children and sister-in-laws? Issei's mother teased. You did always say you were going to get a harem someday. Seems you were doing well while you were away. His father teased. I didn't have that kind of intention while I was there. I lost my memory, remember? Issei vehemently defended himself. Yet you didn't deny wanting a harem when he said it. You didn't deny it when the devils brought it up either. Da Vinci decided to stir the pot more. Issei was silent. He couldn't talk his way out of this one, so he just shut up. Mash wanted to comfort him, but she had conflicted feelings about her senpai's desires. Well, in any case, everything should be set up for now. We will try to keep up our support for you as long as possible. Issei had a sad look on his face. Right. This is only going to last as long as you're in command. He looked despondent. The parents were confused. Why wouldn't Da Vinci-chan be in charge? Issei's mom asked. I am only in charge because the previous 2 directors died, and I had the highest rank in Chaldea after them. Since the previous crisis has passed, the Mages Association has to investigate the incident as well as choose what is going to happen to Chaldea now that we are technically leaderless. I know that it's just politics, but it is absurd that the people whose lives we saved think we are some kind of danger. Well, there is nothing we can do about it. They have assets attached to Chaldea. Since Olga died, they make the rules in terms of what happens to it. Issei couldn't really accept it still after everything they went through. Then he hit upon an idea. But those rules only really apply to your world. It would be different if you could become self-sustaining in a place where they have no jurisdiction, he said with a slightly mischievous look. Da Vinci had a look of surprise but quickly got a mischievous smile of her own, seeing where Issei was driving at. We would have to play it properly, but what you say is true. I think we should get a handle on your own situation first before we make any big moves, but well, maybe we can get support from one of the factions in your world. Everyone had a confident smile on their face. Not only would we be able to act more freely, but we would be in a world with real magic. Something that mages all over the world have been working themselves to the bone to get their hands on. I guess that means I'm going to have to work to get on the devil's good side if I'm going to help everyone. Issei said with determination. All right. Everything has been covered, so we should begin the transferring process. Mash will come back to Chaldea and the servants will be transferred to your location. Everyone nodded in agreement and began doing their jobs. Mash had left for the night, and the servants got transferred and introduced themselves to Issei's parents. Martha, Boudica, Reikyu, and Jean hit it off with the pair, and Jack was loved immediately by his mom. After that, everyone got settled for the night. Back in Chaldea, everything seems fine for now, but we still don't know the status of your condition, Da Vinci said. It should be fine for you to fight while you're with Ritsuka in his town, but we are going to have you refrain from going into any singularities for the time being. Why can't I go? Mash seemed upset about not being able to travel with her senpai. Because we can't immediately retrieve you if something happens in a singularity. At least at his home you can come and go to Chaldea whenever it becomes necessary. I see. Mash understood but didn't want to accept it. It's fine, it's not like you can't help still. I will have you help monitor Ritsuka as to make sure he is stable during his missions. It wasn't the best solution, but it was better than doing nothing. Alright, time to do some last checkups and then you can go back home to your lover. Da Vinci teased. Mash's face went into an intense blush as Da Vinci chuckled. At Co-Academy, Issei was getting ready to leave for the day when he was stopped by Sona. Hayada-kun, I have set up your request. Here, take these with you and deliver them to Ms. Kirilight. She is set to start tomorrow. Thank you, Kaicho. I will make sure to let her know. She will be very happy. She never went to school before, and she's always wanted to experience it. You mentioned that before. How was she educated? I guess you could call it homeschooling. But well, she didn't really need to learn anything about the world besides history and things that she was interested in. So in a way she is really smart in the topics she knows, but is average in every other subject. I see. Well, I'm sure she will become a good student. She definitely seems diligent enough. Well, I have to get back to my duties. Have a good evening. Same to you, Kaicho. Issei left and started heading home. On his way back, someone called out to him. Hey, Issei! Called out Kiryu. Issei turned around and saw the female pervert running to him. What was all that with the Kaicho earlier? Apparently she saw Issei's talk earlier and wanted to know what was going on. Right, I suppose you are due for an update. A lot has happened in the past few days, and it's a bit much to explain here. Follow me and we'll talk at my place. Kiryu had a mischievous smile on her face. My, how bold of you to bring an innocent girl like me to your house. I hope you weren't planning on anything to happen. She teased. Issei decided to tease her back. Only if you wanted to, he said playfully. I'm sure it would be a wild experience for both of us. He gave her a mischievous look of his own, but it went away when he saw something he wasn't expecting. Kiryu was blushing like crazy. Apparently, while she was good at teasing others, she was weak when she herself was teased. Issei was surprised to see this side of her who usually was more composed. They walked in awkward silence for a bit before Kiryu spoke again. So am I going to meet the girl you managed to hook up with? Issei gave her a side glance. Maybe if she comes back from her checkup soon. Kiryu gave him a concerned look. Is she okay? It's nothing serious. Mashu has a special constitution, so she needs to be examined in order to make sure nothing is wrong. It's the same as an annual checkup, she just needs it more often. Issei comforted. So her name is Mashuha? Kiryu said, this being the first time she heard her name. Before they knew it, they were at Issei's home. Issei opened the door, and Kiryu followed him in. Ka-san, Tu-san, I'm home and I brought Kiryu over. Issei yelled to his parents. There was stirring in the house as the parents came to greet them, followed by Reiku. Welcome back, Issei. It's nice to see you again, Kiryu-chan. Issei's mom greeted them. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Hayadu, it's nice to see you again. She looked at the woman behind them. I'm sorry, miss, but who are you? Oh. I'm Ika Kiryu, by the way. She asked politely. The woman looked at Issei and he gave a nod in affirmation. Era, I am master's servant. My name is Minamoto no Reiku, but you may call me Reiku. She introduced herself with a bow. Kiryu had her eyes wide open at who she was talking to. Reiku as in the famous one from Japanese mythology. That Reiku? She couldn't hide her shock. Issei chuckled. Yeah, like I said, there is a lot to catch you up on. They moved into the living room and Issei explained what happened over the past few days, from the love letter to the meeting with the devils. Kiryu took all this in and was trying to decide what to talk about first. So what are you going to do now? You have essentially been given free rein in the town, and you have a super-powered army at your beck and call that I don't think even the military could stop. What do you take me for? It's not like I'm going to take over the world. If anything, I plan on strengthening the defenses of this town as well as dealing with the current unwanted visitors. Right, the fallen angels. She had a sad look on her face. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Hayadu. It's fine. It's not like you were the one who caused it. In the end, it all worked out for the better. Still, I don't know whether or not you are incredibly lucky or incredibly unlucky. Yeah, I'm beginning to wonder about that myself. Issei had a self-deprecating smile on. He then looked to the others in the room. Has Mashu come back yet? Not yet, but it shouldn't be long before she returns, answered Reiku. Issei looked a little disappointed but was brought out of it by Kiryu, who had a question he was quite used to. Excuse me, but I thought Reiku was a man, not a woman. Issei had a wry smile on his face. The place I was summoned to was a parallel Earth with a slightly different history. All the myths and legends are the same, even to the point where those figures are portrayed as the same genders they are in ours. But as I've learned from summoning them, a lot of them were either misrepresented or were hiding their gender for the sake of accomplishing their goals. Kiryu could only take his word for it, not that she was complaining. Well, at least you get work with people who have a good body. It must be heaven for you, she teased. Issei wanted to respond, but Reiku spoke first. Era, I hold great love for Master. He has worked diligently to help others and has asked for nothing in return, so I will devote myself to him until his final days, she said unashamedly. Issei had an intense blush on his face while Kiryu had a shit-eating grin on hers. Am I interrupting something? A voice came from the living room doorway. When everyone looked over, they saw Mash standing there. Issei got up, positively beaming, and went over to her. You're back. How did it go? Everything seems fine for now, but I need to check in every now and then to make sure I stay stable. As long as you're okay, that's fine with me. They smiled at each other for a while. Get a room, you two, Kiryu commented. The two snapped out of it, and had embarrassed looks on their faces. Kiryu got up from her seat and walked over to them, giving Mash a once-over. Mash looked confused and slightly uncomfortable from her gaze, but shortly after Kiryu held out her hand and introduced herself. Hello? My name is Ika Kiryu. I'm Issei's classmate. Mash took her hand and shook it. I'm Mash Kiryulite. I'm Senpai's girlfriend. Don't you mean servant? She said teasingly. Mash had a surprised look on her face and turned to Issei, who gave her an affirming nod. It's fine, she knows about what happened to me, he told her. Kiryu realized her joke caused her to be concerned instead of lighten up, so she corrected herself. Sorry, I was just teasing you. I didn't mean to alarm you. Mash seemed to calm down after that. She then had a question for her. What are you to Senpai? Kiria had a befuddled look on her face, not expecting the question. Mash was staring at her with a serious look. Her first instinct was to make a joke, but she held back and answered honestly. I'm his friend. One of 3, and the best of them if I may brag, she said while puffing out her chest. Issei chuckled and commented. Not exactly a hard thing to do when your only competition are 2 idiots. Hey, you're the one who is friends with said idiots. Touché. While the two were exchanging witty banter, everyone else in the room was looking at them with smiles on their faces. Mash seemed to have come to an understanding and relaxed. It was then that Issei remembered something. Oh right, before I forget. Mashu, I have your school uniform and the materials you'll need for the classes. He handed over the things that Kaicho gave him to Mash. Is that what you were talking to Sonakaishu about? Kiria asked. Yeah. It was about enrolling Mashu into our school. Starting tomorrow, she will be a part of our class. Kiria had a smile on her face. I can't wait to see everyone's reaction when they find out she's your girlfriend. Issei had a cold sweat going down his face. He was happy that Mash would be in school with him, but that meant that the rumors are gonna fly across the whole school. Not to mention the 2 idiots are gonna hound him about getting with girls more than before. Mash had a concerned look on her face at seeing Issei's reaction. Maybe this was a bad idea, she said somewhat dejectedly. Issei immediately recomposed himself and looked straight at Mash. No. It's fine. Like you said before, what they say doesn't matter. As long as I have those who do understand, then it's all worth it. He said with conviction that not even he knew where it came from. Well, let's leave that for tomorrow. Dinner is almost ready. Issei's mom interrupted. Issei looked at her and had a small smile. Sounds good. We should eat before going out tonight. Oh. You're still going out at night? Issei's mom said with a bit of sadness in her voice. Issei had a sad smile on his face. He didn't like worrying her, but this was still necessary for him to do. Yes, Ka-san, I still have to train and get stronger. Just because I got my reliable companions back doesn't mean I can sit back and leave it all to them. At least I won't be going out on my own now, so there is no need to worry as much. He did his best to comfort her. Mash was looking between the two in concern, but then spoke to Issei's mom. Don't worry, Ka-san, I will make sure to keep Senpai safe, she said with determination. Issei's mom was surprised by her statement, but was happy both for her words and for being called Ka-san. I'm thankful, Mashu. Please take care of my troublesome son while he is out there. Mash gave a thumbs up. You can leave it to me. After that they all went to have dinner. Kiria stayed for dinner as well before leaving. Mash moved her stuff into her room and she and Issei went out for the night. While they were out on the town, Mash had a question. Senpai, why are we doing this at night? Mostly out of habit. When I was being spied on by the devils, this was the only time they weren't watching me. But that's no longer an issue, so it's mostly out of habit. He paused a bit before he continued. The other reason is because, like what was mentioned in the meeting yesterday, I would occasionally run into trouble at night from strays and other creatures of the night. Supernatural creatures tend to be more active at night, and they make for good training. Mash had a concerned look on her face, remembering that Issei had been fighting by himself for months trying to get stronger, putting himself in harm's way in order to, in his eyes, walk beside her and the other servants. Oh, that's right, I haven't introduced you to him yet, Issei seemed to say out of the blue. Mash looked at him confused while he created a magic circle. From the magic circle a bright light shone, and from that light a large wolf appeared, surprising Mash. Mashu, this is Roman, my direwolf. He knelt down and started scratching him behind his ears, which he clearly enjoyed since his tail was wagging. Mash looked at the two. You named him after the doctor? She had a sad smile on her face. Yeah. It just seemed right at the time. He also had a sad smile. I'm sure he would be flattered. I'm sure he would comment something like, so you think I'm like a dog, huh? Or something like that, he said with a wry smile. The two shared a laugh, then Issei stood up. Okay, time to do some training. Let's go, you two. Understood. Roar. Both Mash and Roman gave him an affirmative and went on into the night. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow Myth0s216 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.